Today we're talking with Tim Cook from the United Kingdom. He's the Queensland invited speaker for the ANZCA conference. Tim's been involved in the NAP projects in the United Kingdom. Hi Tim, and thank you for speaking with us today.
Hi Kath.
Could you tell me how you first became involved with the NAP projects?
I was invited when I was at the ESA meeting in Paris, and I was at a cocktail reception in the British Embassy, which was all Louis XIV's surroundings. And the chap who'd run NAP 1 and NAP 2 got chatting to me and asked me if I'd like to be involved in the projects going forward. I said no once, twice, and on the third time said yes. And they evolved, they changed from what I was expecting them to be into what they were quite quickly, and that's how I got involved.
So the NAP 1 and 2 projects were quite a different concept to what NAP has evolved to be. With the involvement of all of the NHS hospitals, how did you reach that level of engagement?
It was a lot of hard work. It's become easier, but when we set off, it was novel to engage the whole of the country. So NAP 1 and 2 had about 40% return rates, which is maybe typical for a lot of surveys, which is what they were. We set about creating a network of local coordinators. They were called local reporters for NAP 3, and then have been local coordinators since then, who essentially ran the projects at individual hospitals or trusts. And the first big step was creating those local coordinators and then getting them engaged. We've progressed as time has gone by, so now, so originally the local coordinators would report cases and when they had them, and now we have a process of negative reporting. So each month, every local reporter is required to state if they have or haven't had a case of whatever we happen to be looking at. So for NAP 6 at the moment, we have about 280 local coordinators covering 320 hospitals, who each month will say, I haven't had a case of grade 3 anaphylaxis this month, or I have, and then report it. But it's getting the first 90% of hospitals engaged was a lot of work. Getting the last 10% was 2 or 3 times as much work as that was in the first place. Individual phone calls.
We've got now huge sets of data that we can refer to. How applicable is that to different countries, for instance with the anaphylaxis and regional variations we might see in rates around the world?
I think one has to put the data in the context that it's been created. So it's come from the National Health Service with its strengths and limits that it has. It's come from the UK population, so there will be variations. So for instance with NAP 4, one of the issues that came up was obesity as a big issue, problems in intensive care. So if you have different rates of obesity or different ethnic populations with different rates of obesity, you'll have different results. If you have a different setup with say physicians running in intensive care rather than in the UK where it's all anaesthesia based intensivists, then again you'll probably run into different numerical issues, but the themes remain the same. And I think when we set up the NAPs, the main aim was around the numbers, was about creating instances. So the instance of complications of spinals and epidurals was for NAP 3. But it very, very rapidly became apparent that what was most interesting was the patient stories and the themes that emerged, and the qualitative information that's come out of it has been far more powerful in keeping people engaged, in people learning from the reports, and in changing culture and changing practice.
Where do you think the NAP projects are going to move to from here?
Well, we had a meeting in the UK 10 days ago looking at whether the projects would continue. That's still up in the air. I am stepping away from them. It's time for somebody else to have a go. But I think they should continue. I think there are a few topics that we could look at. The ones that spring to mind are complications of peripheral nerve blockade, unexpected cardiac arrests in the operating theatre. I think yourself and others have talked about a NAP looking at anaesthetist welfare. I think that would be a divergence, but it would be something interesting. And then in the future, I'd like to think that hospitals will start collecting this data routinely, so that in the future, digitally, we should be collecting all this data routinely, and that should then make it a lot easier to get the numbers to track whether there are changes. But perhaps we still need to have that element of looking at cases individually, because the depth of data that comes from a detailed, in-depth peer review of the cases is, I think, probably unique.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
It's been my pleasure.
Great, thank you.